I've been a fan of the Guilty Gear series since I stumbled onto a copy of XX back in high school and witnessed the greatest intro video of all time. No, not that one.
Oh no, I'm falling!
Yeah, that's it. That's the stuff. It's been a little bit more than a year now since the release of Guilty Gear Strive, and while I was initially lukewarm on the game, the roster additions and gameplay changes have actually done a lot to change my opinion. I mean, just look at Testament. I actually like Strive now. I like it a lot even. And it seems that I'm not alone in that opinion, because whether you look at sales figures, stream views, or Google Trends, Guilty Gear seems to be on top of the fighting game world right now. But it's hard to talk about the first year of the game's life without also talking about COVID-19. Strive dropped a full year into COVID lockdowns, and without offline events to look forward to, having good net play is one of the most important things that a fighting game can have right now. If your game drops without good netcode, in this year of our Lord and Savior Luigi Mario 2022, it might as well be dead in the water. Sorry, JoJo's fans. You see, netplay is so important that other games like BlazBlue or Persona Arena, even just getting an announcement that there will be the addition of rollback netcode in the future has been enough to spark renewed interest in those titles. And when it comes to Strive, Arxis understood the assignment. If you ask somebody what is the best part of playing Strive online, odds are the first thing they're going to say is the netcode, and they are not wrong. Strive has some of the smoothest online play of any game I've ever played. But what happens if you take it just one step further, and you ask about the second best part of playing Strive online? You see, that's where it gets complicated. I'm not even sure how I would answer that question. You see, once you get into a match, things are great. But everything else about playing Strive online has left a bad taste in my mouth. And in some ways, Strive is actually a step backward not only from contemporary titles, but also from previous releases from Arc System Works. For this video though, I want to focus on the matchmaking in particular. Yeah, I could reach for the low-hanging fruit of harping about how it still takes longer to connect to the game servers than it takes to watch the entirety of the Uma Musume anniversary song Never Looking Back, but I'd rather not beat a dead horse. I have a long history with the Guilty Gear series, and I've been competitive in Xrd in particular, and let the record show that my air throws are fucking nice. Nowadays though, I just don't have as much time to put into games between other hobbies, my career, and the crushing burden of being an internationally renowned content creator. So when I want to play a fighting game lately, it's usually going to be through automatic matchmaking, and ideally I want that game's matchmaking to 1. Quickly put me in a match with another person, 2. Put me in a stable connection, and 3. Ideally match me with people that are at my skill level or even better, slightly better than me. And I can't say that Strive does any of these well. So let's get into what, in my humble onion, is at the center of a lot of these issues, and that's the tower. Now, if you stumbled into this video with no knowledge of what I'm talking about, well, thanks for sticking around. But if you do know, just sit tight for a second. You see, the tower is the core of Strive's online play, and it's broken up into 10 floors, which, true to the series history, are named after songs that are older than some of the people placing in this game. As you win at each floor of the tower, you move up until you reach floor 10. If you win enough there, you're invited to participate
in the Celestial Challenge, where you are asked to attack and kill God.
Or something like that. When you first get to the Celestial floor, you have to prove yourself by squaring off against the other players there. If you manage to win 5 matches before you lose 2, you get to stay in heaven. But if you lose, you are cast out like Lucifer.
And if you fall as Lucifer fell, you'll fall in flame.
Well, until you win enough that you get to challenge again. And then at the end of the month, everyone but the highest ranked players are kicked back to floor 10 and the whole thing starts over again. The tower is a lot of things, and it's certainly a novel approach to netplay. I mean, it was even fun for the first couple of months, but looking back after a year, I'm genuinely coming around to thinking that this is the worst ranked mode I have ever seen in a fighting game. And I want to get a little bit more into that, so let's break it down using those 3 points that I laid out earlier about what I am personally looking for in matchmaking. So first, does it let you get into games quickly? Personally, my ideal is something like a big button that's right there on the main menu that you can click on and it drops you into matchmaking and you're connected to another person in maybe about a minute or two. Now, Strive does have a quick launch option, so let's take a look at that. Okay, we're connecting to the server. I thought we already did that, but okay. Now I'm picking some preferences, okay. All right, finally, after several menus, I'm in training mode and waiting for a match. That feels like a lot of hoops to jump through if I just want to connect to another person and play. And what if I back out though, and I go to the actual lobbies in the tower? So I pick a floor that I want to go to, and here we are. There's cabinets, there's other players, and I have to play a mini platformer to challenge somebody who's across the room from me. I can't even see all the setups at first because of the news ticker taking up half my screen. That's fine. I love Super Mario, or maybe this is more like a Banjo-Kazooie. Yeah, I got my A game on right now. Yeah, it's a novel way to look at matchmaking, and it's even cute. But now, whenever I jump into the lobbies, I feel like I'm on one of those game shows where people have to bite into things to find out where the chocolate is hidden in the room. Except, I'm a contestant, and I really just want a chocolate, and I don't know why I'm here. Strive puts up a lot of what feels like unnecessary barriers between players, and it actually makes me nostalgic for those old Xrd sign lobbies. It's the same basic idea. You've got cabinets, you can see the other people in the lobby and who's waiting to play and all that. It's bare bones in comparison to the tower, but it works pretty well for what it is, and as it stands, I can't say that Strive does a good job of quickly getting players into matches. So what about the connections? What about the quality of those connections once you get into a game? All right, to answer this one, let's dial back a bit and look at the matchmaking screen again. So what do you see here? You've got the character the person is playing. Okay, cool. You've got their bounty and you've got a little catchphrase they wrote. Okay, excellent, love it, no notes. But, okay, maybe some notes, because what don't you see here? There's nothing on the screen about the quality of our connection, but as soon as we actually get into a match, I can see our ping and the number of frames of rollback that are being added to the game. Why couldn't that have been made available earlier? Like other contemporary games actually give me information even about whether or not my opponent is playing on Wi-Fi, or whether or not they are known for quitting out of matches. Older Arc Sys titles even had those bar indicators as a proxy for network health. Sure, they weren't always accurate, and they definitely lied to you sometimes, but it was something to go off of, and they were pretty good for what they are. Now let us just assume, for 1 second, that Shiki wasn't lying, and it actually is okay to use Wi-Fi as long as you're close to your router. Now, it's still gonna cause problems if you or your opponent isn't playing the game at a stable 60 frames per second. Fellow dinosaurs might remember a little game called Street Fighter 4, which actually ran a benchmarking tool on the PC version, and your opponent could actually see how your computer stacked up. And look, it's cool if somebody else wants to play the game with stuttering on their own time, but I'm not trying to lock myself in a cage with a teleporting Leo player hellbent on becoming the next Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. I said at the jump that Strive's netcode is great, and it is. But even the very best netcode can only do so much with a bad connection. And it sticks out to me that Strive gives players less information than both contemporary titles and previous games from the same developers. So this ends up being an area where the user experience seems like it's sliding backwards, and it just doesn't make sense to me why that is. Alright. So we've gone over whether or not it's easy to get into games and the info the game gives you about matchmaking and connection health, and struck out twice so far. But what about the actual matchmaking? Ideally, I want to play against players that are around my skill level or even slightly stronger. That's really the ideal condition for learning, so I want to be losing a little bit more than half the time. So let's take another look at the tower. Intuitively, you can probably imagine how the floors might line up with something like a rank system that starts at bronze and then proceeds up from there. However, as nice as that would be, it hasn't quite worked out like that. Less experienced players have either moved on or gotten better, and as it is now, the bulk of activity takes place between floors 9, 10, and the celestial floor, and with fewer bins to sort players into, it becomes harder to find those good matches. So remember that whole celestial challenge thing, where you have to win 5 matches before you lose 2? Well, let's say, for example, you match with the platonic ideal of an evenly matched opponent, and you are winning exactly half the matches that you play with this person. You would fail the challenge every single time. And worse, every time that you do, you would have to sit through the same unskippable dialogue where this Alfred Pennyworth looking guy gives you the exact same speech he gave you the last dozen times you came through. The first time that I went through the Celestial Challenge and passed it, it made me feel something. It felt like playing in tournament matches. It was tense. I cared about the outcome. And that's a feeling that I don't think I've ever gotten before, and I don't think I've gotten since. But that appeal has worn off, and now this whole thing feels less like an accomplishment and more like a crapshoot of who I just happen to end up playing on any given attempt. Smarter people than me, and I'm a doctor, they see this problem and they take the obvious answer. The game shows you what character your opponent's playing as well as their bounties, so you just cherry pick matches until you pass the challenge. Ducking has become so endemic that early on in the game's life, it killed my enjoyment in the system. There I was, bright-eyed and confident, as I sat firmly in the backpack of 1.0 Ram Malort Valentine. Except I noticed that people would duck me more often as my bounty kept increasing. And eventually, I just started playing other characters just so that there would be less downtime between games. But I don't even fault the people who do this because they're doing the best they can with a flawed system. But instead of just bashing the system that is there, I want to talk about what I think a better system could look like. Personally, I think Street Fighter V is pretty close. Yeah, it has some issues, particularly that your ranks never reset, league points don't decay over time, and there are no placement matches to keep the lower ranks from becoming a hell ruled by Smurfs. And if you take nothing else away from this video, you now know that the Christian image of hell exists in the Smurfs universe. It's actually kind of funny that Strive actually does specifically address each of these issues directly, but it does so in ways that are either intrusive, obtuse, or just plain frustrating, and the end result is actually worse for it. So now that I've laid all that out, let me reiterate that I like this game a lot. The actual gameplay is great. It's getting there, that's the problem. You might remember that couple of weeks there where the internet was overrun by memes about cakes that look like other things. That's because they're covered in fondant. It's a kind of modeling sugar that is basically magic and can turn cakes into other things. It is technically edible. However, I don't think I have ever met a person who actually likes eating fondant. And that's kind of how I feel about Strive. The cake is great, it's a good bake. But I just don't like eating through an inch of fondant every time that I want to play it. And with Street Fighter 6 on the horizon, I see things like the battle faces that seem cool now, but I wonder if I'm going to feel the same way about them after a year or so. And even in that trailer, when I saw the Battle Hub pop up, my first thought was, please don't let this be anything like the tower. So that's really what I got this time around. And this really started as a way for me to play with some new software and editing techniques, but let me know what you think, whether about the video or how I sound or anything like that. So, as always, take care and take care of the people around you, because each other is all we got on this weird spinning space rock. Take care.